Greetings to you all. My name is Hansar Makaputra, and I'm visiting assistant professor in comparative theology and Christian-Muslim relations here at HIU. On behalf of the community prayer team, I welcome you to HIU's community prayer. It is a time to gather together for spiritual support. The format and focus of the service will change and take the shape of the tradition of the leader each week. Attendees who do not identify with a particular tradition are encouraged to attend and be participant observers as their comfort level allows. All are welcome as participants or guests. As our Christian sisters and brothers approach and celebrate the Christmas Day, today we have Professor Emily Levine, Rabbi Stanley M. Kessler, Distinguished Professor of New Testament and Jewish Studies at HIU. She will reflect on the theme of Christmas and Jews, problems and possibilities. Let us prepare our heart and begin our session. And we will have Heather to start.
Hello, everyone. My name is Heather Brubaker, and I am a student in the chaplaincy program. And I am just gobsmacked and honored to be here introducing Dr. Levine, AJ. I told her that I have one of her books on my living room shelf, and I was gifted this as a wedding present when I got married. And my friend who wrote an inscription in it, there it is, thanked me for giving him a Jewish annotated college experience. So it is a real treasure and again, just such an honor to be here. I want to take a moment before we offer a couple prayers to open this moment, just to acknowledge this strange and difficult moment that we are in, where the landscape seems to be shifting by the day. So I just like to offer us a moment to pause. If you want to think about or send healing to anyone in your life who needs that today, or if there's no one in particular, I invite you to offer strength and healing to our healthcare workers who are going to need it in the holiday season and the weeks to come. So let's just take a moment of quiet to ourselves to send those wishes out into the world. Okay. And now to bring us into this space together, I'm going to offer two very short prayers from the Jewish tradition. The first one I'm going to sing, and it's one of my favorites. It's the Shehechianu. And this prayer celebrates a special moment, often a first or a moment of arriving together. And, as our worlds narrow a little bit, I want to continue to celebrate what is possible. And I think that becomes even more important. So today we'll say the Shehechianu to celebrate being able to learn and commune together in this way. And I'm going to go ahead and put the transliteration and the translation in the chat here so that everyone can see what I'm going to sing. Let me go ahead and just get that in there. Didn't copy over, give me 1 second. Oh, it copied a couple times, sorry about that, but right at the top there, if you see it, it came through. So I'm just gonna go ahead and sing this one out loud, and then for the second one, I'll invite you to join. Baruch atah Hashem, Eloheinu melech haolam, Shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. And you can see the translation that thanks God for keeping us alive, for sustaining us, and for bringing us to this season. Okay. And the next prayer I'm going to offer is one that is often offered when you are about to join someone in study of holy text. So I'm going to do the same thing and copy that into the chat there so you can see it. There we go. And this time I'm going to invite you to unmute yourselves and to read the prayer with us because we're doing this together. So don't worry if you don't get the words exactly right. We're going for the spirit of the thing rather than the letter here. And what we are blessing, the blessing we are offering is saying, blessed are you, our God, sovereign of all, who hallows us with mitzvot, with good deeds, and who commands us to engage the words of Torah with our sacred text. Okay, so we're going to start together, everyone, with the words Baruch Atah, and then you can follow along. Here we go. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah. Amen.
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 AJ, over to you.
I think I was going to actually introduce AJ, but you've done such a good job. I won't do that, but I'll just say hello. I'm President Joel Lohr. Thank you, AJ, for being here. Maybe I'll say one word or one sentence, and I'll say there are so many accomplishments I could mention, but I won't because we're in a prayer service. And I will simply say that I think AJ has helped me through some of her books, particularly Misunderstood Jew and others, helped me to be a better Christian. And I think that's a special gift to have as a Jew. And also, I think what I appreciate most about your approach is that you take so seriously your own tradition and the Christian tradition, even while you like to poke fun at yourself and Christianity at the same time. And your sense of humor is a big part of why I enjoy your presence so much. So thank you for keeping me laughing, but also keeping me engaged intellectually. Take it away.
Thank you so very much. It's an honor to be with you. It's an honor to participate in the series. Thanks to Hans and to your team for making this easy for me. Ideally, I would be in Hartford and then could actually be with you face to face. So I look forward to that opportunity for those of you who are local sometime in June. And special thanks to Heather. You're going to be a fabulous chaplain if you're not already. So thanks. So I've got a little over 20 minutes to look at Christmas and Jews, problems and possibilities. So this is a form of study, but it's also a form of reflection. And as Joel said, reflection can be difficult. It can be fun. And I think that's part of the genius of both the Jewish tradition, broadly speaking, and of Jesus in particular, is they can get you laughing and thinking at the same time. Education and entertainment are not mutually exclusive. So I'll start by just noting that I happen to like Christmas a lot. The picture is of my daughter's dog, whose name is Olive, after the other reindeer. And I hope that makes some sense to you. And that gives you a sense that even when my children were little, I would sing Christmas carols to them. Olive, by the way, is a Labradoodle. I love Christmas carols. I like Christmas cookies. What's not to like? I like Christmas cheer. When I was a child, my parents told me that Christmas was sort of like celebrating somebody else's birthday, and they got presents and you didn't, but you might get cookies. So it's kind of worth like going over and saying it's not yours, but it's something that's beautiful that we could understand. And when I did at one point, when I was quite young, asked my parents how come we had the only household on the block that did not have Christmas lights, because that made me feel a little bit like out of sync. My parents explained to me that Christians put up Christmas lights to make Jews happy. And I said, well, so how exactly, what do we do? And they said, oh, well, on Christmas Day, when Christians are in church, we go take their jobs for them. So we take extra shifts in the hospital and we drop off food to people who need it. So we help each other. We help Christians do their work when they're in church. And in response, Christians put out Christmas lights for us. I told my children that, and they actually believed that for a while. I still think it's a very nice thing. I have a personal interest in Christmas too, which to some extent drives my interest in Jews and Christians knowing about each other. When I was a child, I'm from Massachusetts, growing up in a predominantly Roman Catholic neighborhood. I met my first Protestant who registered as a Protestant when I went off to university. My friends told me that when Jesus came back, and they were convinced he was coming back, he would come back the same way he came before, which was to a Jewish virgin. And I was the only one in the neighborhood, so I was in the running. And I had these panicky thoughts when I was in third grade that an angel would appear to me in my bedroom and say, "Hail, Amy Jill, you're going to have a baby." And I'm thinking, I just want to get through third grade. So for a variety of reasons, I've always had a special interest in the Virgin Mary, because I thought, she's a Jewish woman like I'm a Jewish woman. Clearly, we have stuff to share in common. Having been married now close to 40 years and with 2 kids, it's no longer possible for me to be the Virgin Mother of God, which may be too much information, but it is a way of me introducing myself to you. I also like Christmas songs, and these are the secular songs. White Christmas by Irving Berlin, Johnny Marks, who hit a trifecta with Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Rocking Around the Christmas Tree, and A Holly Jolly Christmas. It even turns out that the fellow who wrote Silver Bells, originally Jacob Harold Levison, he just changed his name. And in looking at this stuff, I like Eartha Kitt a lot. I discovered that Santa Baby was co-written by Joan Javits, who was Jacob Javitz's niece. Now, I like these Christmas songs. I like the fact that they're written by Jews. What concerns me, however, is that when we take this kind of secular Christmas, some of the message of the actual Christmas story that we have in the Gospel of Matthew chapters 1 and 2 and the Gospel of Luke chapters 1 and 2 goes missing. And I think it's sad that Jews may know these Christmas songs. We know a whole lot more about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer than we actually know about Jesus of Nazareth. So I think Christmas then provides us an opportunity to know a little bit more about the sacred stories and not simply the secular appropriation of this material. So in an efficient manner, I found 5 problems that come about when Jews start engaging with Christmas, but then 5 possibilities. So one, for example, is the standard Christmas wars about what gets put on public space, the so-called December dilemma. And when I was a child, it was certainly the case that Christmas was all over the place, including in the public school system. And I had a problem, where's Hanukkah and how do we get represented? So how do we deal with some of this public-private church-state relations? And how can we get past this so-called war on Christmas and simply learn to celebrate what it is we're supposed to be celebrating rather than look for political points? I also wonder what we teach our children. Are we having in the public school system Christmas festivals or winter festivals? And if part of that winter festival is Christmas carols, well, then we're not really doing a winter festival because we could sing those carols in the summertime as one would do in Australia. I worry about how public schools are decorated. I wonder if Santa comes to town. Santa just came to my neighborhood in Nashville on Saturday. It was sad that it rained. But the idea was, let's have everybody in the neighborhood put up lights and contribute to the Santa thing. And then the Jews are thinking, where are we? And the kids are as well. When I was in elementary school in North Dartmouth, Massachusetts, we did get a Hanukkah song for every single winter themed program. I still think that Silent Night is a much prettier song than I Had a Little Dreidel. And I don't like tokenism. So how do we instruct our children better to appreciate our neighbors' religions without watering them down to some sort of secular lowest common denominator? And how do we provide that instruction? And who is to provide that instruction? Another problem is the equating of Christmas and Hanukkah. The reason I pulled my daughter out of the public school system in Nashville, there were various reasons, but the last straw, as they say, was the first winter festival. When my daughter comes home and explains to me what Hanukkah is, because she learned it in the public school system, she got it wrong, but it was a nice effort. So I went down and talked to the teacher and said, well, do you want me to explain Christmas? I have a PhD in New Testament. And the teacher said, no, because Christmas is a religious holiday. And I'm thinking, so what is Hanukkah? So then she said, well, Dr. Levine, she was the one person I made call me Dr. Levine because I needed that credit. She said, you'll be pleased to know that we're being interfaith in our winter festival. And on the top of her invitation, which had not yet been set out, was a Chanukia, a 9-branched menorah, a Magen David, a Star of David, a candy cane, and a poinsettia plant. And I said, I don't really think this works terribly well. And she said, well, I'm trying to be interreligious and respectful. And I said, yes, but to compare a Chanukia and a Star of David to a candy cane would be kind of like comparing the baby Jesus or a cross to a potato pancake. And she got the point. She took a scissors and she took off the top of the invitation, and I took my kid out of the public school system. I don't want Hanukkah and Christmas being connected. Christmas is extremely important on the Christian calendar. It is the incarnation of the word. Hanukkah is a very minor festival, which in Judaism does not even have biblical backing. And then we have the more difficult problems of supersessionism and replacement theology. I was doing a talk for an Episcopal congregation in Alabama the other night, Monday night, and somebody asked a very good question. Can I still sing some of these songs O come, Emmanuel, or Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel that mourns in lonely exile until the Son of God appear. And that's supersessionism. It's saying that there's something really, really wrong with Judaism, and Jesus comes and fixes it. And we're still hearing some of that material today where people are saying, oh, there's no room at the inn because the greedy innkeeper wanted the money and Mary and Joseph couldn't pay. Well, there's nothing about that in the text. And now I'm seeing sermons about how the innkeeper did not want Mary to give birth in the inn because if she gives birth, she'll be ritually impure. So it's an issue of purity. This is nonsense. There's just no room at the inn to have a baby. You need a little bit of space and a little bit of privacy. Or sermons that argue that shepherds are impure and unclean and an outcast. And so Jews cast people out and Jesus welcomes them in. Well, no, like the Lord is my shepherd, Psalm 23. Moses was a shepherd, Rachel was a shepherd, David was a shepherd, pretty much everybody who was important was a shepherd. Or sermons that suggest that because Mary is pregnant and she and Joseph are not yet married, that the Jews would have stoned Mary to death. But they're not stoning back then. And we can actually see that from the story of the woman taken in adultery in John chapter 8. That the Magi, who are Persian astrologers, the word magus today still means a Zoroastrian priest, show the universalism of Christianity because suddenly Gentiles are welcomed amid a very xenophobic, very parochial Judaism, missing the fact that Jews welcome Gentiles into the Jerusalem temple and into synagogues. And then we get this radical Jesus who invents social justice. Jesus' whole program of social justice is based on the prophets, on Deuteronomy and the Jewish tradition. So I worry about Christmas being used to toss Judaism under the bus. And finally, the various debates over Isaiah 7:14, which Matthew quotes, look, the virgin shall conceive and bear a child, and they shall name him Emmanuel, which means God is with us, which in fact it does. So that brings us, now that we've seen some of these problems, to some of the possibilities. One of the things that Christmas, I think, can do is let Jews and Christians know that we have different translations and different reception histories and actually different Bibles, because the Old Testament really is not the same thing as the Tanakh. And if we stop having Bible wars and start looking at the differences in how we read and what we read and how we translate, we're in a better position to respect each other. The Hebrew text is Hine ha'alma hara, the Yeledet Ben. Look, the young woman is pregnant and she shall bear a son. But when we get into the Greek, ha'alma, the young woman becomes he parthenos, the virgin. And hara, pregnant or with child, becomes eche kaites. In her womb, she will bear. Eche is the future. We have two different translations, one the Hebrew, one the Greek, that's from the Septuagint, and Matthew was reading the Greek. Matthew didn't get it wrong, and the Greek didn't get it wrong either. The other possibility is Christmas might encourage Jews to know a little bit more about our own history. We're pretty good with the biblical material if we actually made our way post-bar and bat mitzvah, but we know very little about Second Temple Judaism, the time that Jesus lived and Paul lived, and in which the majority of the New Testament was written. So we may know something about the Dead Sea Scrolls, and we may know something about Josephus or something about Philo. But studying the New Testament, in fact, studying the Christian story, opens up multiple possibilities for Jews to learn more about our own tradition. We've got divine births too. Who knew? There are the sons of God who have relations with the daughters of men back in Genesis chapter 6. And that whole tradition gets really developed in the Second Temple period. There's a strong strain of tradition that suggests that Samson's father was an angel. You can read Judges 13 on your own. And in the Dead Sea Scrolls and in other texts, we have a figure called Melchizedek, who's very important in the New Testament in what's called the Epistle to the Hebrews. Side note, I have to tell my students that Jews don't read the Epistle to the Hebrews, even though it says the Epistle to the Hebrews. Melchizedek shows up in Genesis chapter 14 and Psalm 110, extremely important passages in the New Testament. And he seems to have some sort of divine conception as well. So when my friends in the synagogue say this whole divine conception thing is pagan, no, it's not. It's firmly embedded in Second Temple Judaism. Possibility number 3 is we learn about each other's scriptures and how we read texts. So it turns out that there are certain texts that are super important in Christianity. Although they're part of the Jewish canon, we don't know them. In the Jewish liturgical tradition, for both the Eastern European Ashkenazic tradition and the Mediterranean tradition, the Sephardic tradition, we will never hear Isaiah 7:14 read in public proclamation. And Isaiah 7:14 is, see, the young woman is pregnant and will bear a child, and they will call his name Emmanuel. So my friend Mark Brettler, with whom I co-edited the Jewish Annotated that Heather mentioned, as well as written the Bible with and without Jesus, Mark likes to talk about things that are in 2-point font and things that are in 40-point font. We may be sharing books like Isaiah, but when we learn to read with each other, we see that what's very, very minor in one tradition is huge in another tradition. And that's why it's helpful to read together. And we can see it's not a matter of reading correctly. It's just a matter of what emphasis do we place on individual texts. And the same way that Jews will never hear Isaiah 7:14 read liturgically, it's also the case that for Christians who are on the lectionary is the Parsha HaShavua for mainline Protestants, Eastern Orthodox, and Roman Catholics. So it's the texts that get read, for example, on Sunday morning. The Christians on Sunday morning will hear very, very limited material from the Torah, and I don't think they hear the book of Numbers at all, maybe once. So if we start looking at each other's liturgical tradition, we can understand, oh, that's why you do this, and that's why you do that. Possibility number 4 is that when we start reading together, and here just on the Christmas story, we can move from polemic to mutual understanding. The early church had huge polemics with the synagogue about Isaiah 7:14. In the 2nd century, the Christian writer Justin Martyr, in his dialogue with Trypho, a very long and quite tedious book, in which a Jew, Trypho, argues with a Christian, Justin. Justin says to Trypho, the Jew, you changed the translation, you distorted the translation of this passage made by your elders at the court of Ptolemy, the king of Egypt, asserting that the real meaning of the scripture is not as they have translated it, but should read, behold, a young woman will conceive. Because Justin is basing his reading on the Greek translation, and he's saying you Jews distorted the text. Did they? No. How do we know that? The Dead Sea Scrolls. But we also have Jewish counter-polemic. So Ibn Ezra, the medieval, wonderful biblical scholar, says, it is to me a matter of surprise that those who say that the prophet, meaning Isaiah, refers here to Jesus, since the sign was given to Ahaz, that's the king, and Jesus was born many years after. But there's no reason today to have this type of polemic either, because one can read in what the church calls the sensus plenior, that Isaiah was talking to the king about a particular sign then, but there's such a surfeit of meaning in the prophets that they can mean something in their own time, and they can mean something later as well. And that's, in fact, the way everybody reads, because if we only read from historical context, then we wind up playing, 8th century Bible land or 1st century Bible land. For people in communities that still hold the text sacred, the text still has to speak to people today. And the possibility number 5 is the benefits of reading together. This is Joshua Kaufman's statue that's on the grounds of St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia, and it's called Synagoga and Ecclesia in Our Time. And unlike those medieval cathedrals where synagogue looks bent over with a blindfold and a broken staff, and ecclesia, the church, looks triumphant and proud with a crown and a scepter, maybe we can read together. And what I particularly appreciate about the statue is they're actually facing away from each other, and then they're looking toward each other, to say you don't have to sacrifice the particulars of your relationship on the altar of interfaith sensitivity. Jews stay Jews and Christians stay Christians, and we can read together and we can learn from each other without having to have some sort of lowest common denominator. Which means if Jews and Christians together read the Christmas story in Matthew and Luke, Christians can see it through Jewish eyes, and Jews will ask probably different questions, and Jews could see through Christian eyes, and they can ask different questions again. And when we read these stories together, what do we realize? We realize that all readings are partial, because we will always see different things in the text, depending upon who we are and what our own influences and our own questions are. We learned that biblical interpretation is not a zero-sum game, as it was in antiquity. In antiquity, if the Jews said this and the Christians said that, one of them had to be wrong. But today, we realize that we all have partial readings and we can all be right, because we also realize that what we read depends upon the lenses through which we read. If we read through Christian lenses, we can find Jesus on every single page of the Old Testament, using the Christian term. And if we read through Jewish lenses, we'll find all sorts of other things that Christians will not see, because we're importing Jewish concerns into the text. Opposite readings can both be correct. And that's where mutual respect comes in. We can't respect our neighbors. We certainly can't love our neighbors unless we know something about them. So there's the possibility of Jews actually learning something about Christmas beyond the Amazon order frenzy and Santa and the elves. Learn the original story and see how that story takes shape in a Jewish context. And recognize that if you have faith, the point of faith is that not faith is you read the text and you find the prophecies and you say, oh, let's just follow this dotted line. Faith is not based in logic, and faith is not based in proof texting. Faith is based in something that's a divine gift. It's like love, and it's really got nothing to do with logic. So it seems to me that when Jews and Christians stop fighting over Christmas and start learning about each other's traditions, and when Jews learn a little bit more about how the Christmas story takes shape within a Jewish environment, and how all the various images from the Star of Bethlehem to the question about how do you understand prophecy, to the census in the Gospel of Luke, to what's going on with the shepherds, all of those would have coded for first century Jews. Because this is not a time as if Christians are over here and Jews are over here. There are Jews who accept Jesus as Lord and Savior, and there are Jews who don't, but they're still talking to each other. And it would be very nice if we could recover that, to recover the Jewishness of the Christmas story, so that we can all have a little bit to celebrate, and we will all both celebrate our differences as well as celebrate what we have in common. And I've got 11:28, which is when I was supposed to stop. So thank you for letting me join you. And I hope to talk with you about this a little bit more.
Well, thank you very much, AJ. And this is truly a gift, I think, as a Christian, to learn a lot from this session. And we have a Interfaith Cafe after this. So if you want to have questions or a response, feel free to stay for another 30 minutes. And now we will have a closing, and I will welcome Heather again.
Thank you, Hans. So I will be reading from Numbers chapter 6. God bless you and keep you. May God make God's face to shine upon you and be gracious with you. May God lift up God's countenance upon you and give you peace.
Amen.
Amen. And thank you all for joining our session today. This is the last community prayer for this semester, and we will gather again in January. And as I said earlier, if you're interested to have questions and respond, please stay for the Interfaith Cafe. I wish you all a great week ahead and stay well. Merry Christmas and happy holidays. See you next year. Thank you.